This is Geoffrey of and this video will explain how you can build armies using the different formations of the 1648 mod. And we will start with the Spanish tercio. This was the basic unit, and it is the basic type of pike and sword formation that all factions in the game are using until they have more musketeers than pikemen. So here's an example of a checkable pattern of 6 tercios consisting of 6 pike units and 6 musket units. The musketeers can only be placed in front of the tercio because of the engine. In reality, it would have been all around it. There is a reserve in the rear. You just saw artillery is on the flanks and cavalry next to the artillery supporting the artillery and dragoons supporting the cavalry. And the general is in the rear. You can have more infantry if you so wish, especially more pikemen, or you can have instead more cavalry and less infantry. The key for this formation is that you must have fewer musketeers or no more musketeers than pikemen. So if you have more musketeers than pikemen, then we go to the late period formations that you will see in a minute. So this is the basic early period formation all factions in the game have. So we can see them here in action. They are defending against a similar army attacking them. The AI usually marches forward, often disrupting its formation. There's not much we can do about that. However, one thing we managed to do is to change the way the cavalry behaves. If you have played the For King and Country mode, you would have noticed that the cavalry, the AI cavalry, attacks headlong the center of the pike and sword formation. Here in our mod, cavalry attacks cavalry, as you can see there. Sometimes it attacks the dragoons of the flank, sometimes it attacks the artillery. Catholic factions, once they have more musketeers than pikemen, they adopt the bastioned tercio formation. As you can see there in the picture, we have 4 tercios on one side, 3 on the other, and on every corner they have musketeers. So this is the bastioned tercio. We struggle a little bit to get that going. Here is perhaps the basic idea. We have some pike units, the second line with some infantry, musketeers at the front. As long as you don't have a general, you end up with something like this. This is actually the basic triple line formation you get with Medieval 2. So here are the pikemen fronted by musketeers. It looks a little bit like a tercio, and it's, in a way, it's good enough, although it doesn't look right. And so this is perhaps a little bit better. With more units, you get a block of pikemen and swordsmen, and with musketeers at the front, you can rearrange the musketeers so that 4 of these units are at the 4 corners of this tercio we see here. So these are the musketeer units. You can voluntarily, if you want, you can rearrange them, and the general is at the back. Now, as long as you don't have a proper general but a captain, this is the arrangement you will get. But if you have a proper general, this is how these units will be arranged. Actually, here we have 4 pike formation, 4 pike units, and these are the 4 pike units. They are fronted by 5 musket units. The rear 2 bastions are actually formed here by melee units, by swordsmen. The general, in this case, is in the mix. So here's a single bastion tercio as it's been implemented in the mod. Now we have added also some artillery. The artillery is deployed in the flanks of the tercio on the wings.
Await my orders.
So here's the general, he's in the mix. On the left are the 4 pike units, in front of them the 5 musket units. 2 of them are on the 2 corners of the front. So here are the pike units, now the musket units, and the 2 melee sword units in the rear corners of the tercio. Here are the 2 artillery units and the general. So now we have an even bigger arrangement. Now we have 2 bastion tercios. So in this case we have the with even more units, we have the pike units divided into 2 blocks. So we have 1 block on the left, 1 on the right, and they form the core of 2 bastion tercios, and you will see how it's organized. Now for this we need 20 units, we need 4 pike units, we need 7 musketeer units. There they are at the corners, and the inside corners of the 2 tercios are actually, in this case, manned by swordsmen, which you can put in the tercio itself. For the purpose of the mode, you don't need musketeers there. And you can rearrange those, you can put them with the actual pikemen. And there are cavalry, there are dragoons in the wings covering the artillery, and there is cavalry interspersed in between the tercios. This was the arrangement that was used in the Battle of the White Mountain. So we can see now the bastion tercios in action. Here are the dragoons on the wings, they are covering the artillery. Here is another view. This was the arrangement that was used, as I said, by the Imperialists in the Battle of the White Mountain. The white units are the blocks of pikes, and the darker units is cavalry interspersed between the large tercios. So here it is again, there's cavalry interspersed in between the bastion tercios.
Units, on my orders!
So once again, here are the 4 units of pikemen formed into 2 tercios, 7 units of musketeers at the front of the tercios and at the corners, except the inside corners. We have cavalry in between the tercios. In the rear we have some reserves. The artillery is flanking the tercios on the wings, and they are supported by dragoons. And the general is in the rear. Let's see now the bastion tercio in action. Here are the dragoons covering the artillery. On the other side, in the German style, we have musketeers with cavalry behind them. And the enemy is attacking with a similarly sized army. The cavalry attacks our cavalry, our dragoons, our artillery on our wings. They don't attack the center. So cavalry behaves in a relatively historically correct way. The main issue is actually with the AI pike and shot formation. The AI cannot hold its pike and shot formation. If we could fix that, that would be fantastic. Unfortunately, we could not find a way around this. The AI pike and the shot formation largely disintegrates after the battle starts. Otherwise, the battle AI behaves in a reasonably correct way. Here the AI cavalry has attacked our flanks, our artillery, and our cavalry, which is behind those musketeers. In the meantime, the enemy pikemen are approaching our center, as you can see, under fire from our musketeers. And we go now to the formation adopted by the Protestant factions. Maurice of Nassau, the stadtholder of the Netherlands, made significant reforms based on Roman manuals. He produced a different type of formation that became known as the Dutch formation, and this was adopted eventually by all Protestant factions. The formation capitalized on the increasing numbers of musketeers being available, and the basic principle of the formation was that there were two lines of battalions. Each battalion had a core of a pike unit, a pike company, and every pike company was flanked on either side by a company of musketeers. So they are the musketeers. And here's the double line, so it's a zigzag line. The adjacent battalions are offset. This provided some flexibility and some support, so in case the front line came under pressure, the second line could support them and prevent the collapse of the entire front. So here's the cavalry on the flanks. The dragoons are supporting the cavalry. The general is in the rear. And there could be a third line of reserves. Here there's only one unit of swordsmen. Now you can have a bigger third line. Here we only have 3 battalions, and so there are more units available to form a third line. And so again there are 20 units overall in this arrangement. Here are the 3 pike units. They form the core of the 3 battalions. They are flanked by musketeers. So here are the 3 battalions. Here's the third line formed by sword units. We can take a closer look. You can, if you want, actually mix the swordsmen with the pikemen, if you prefer, or you can keep them as a reserve. There is artillery on either side of the pike and shot formation. It is supported by cavalry, and the cavalry is in turn supported by dragoons. There are also potentially light units. We tend to put them on the flanks so they're out of the way. If you want, you can use them as reserve. So here are some fanatics, some peasants. The German formation was not a proper formation. It was really a variation of the Dutch formation, if you like, or it was just a German style. The idea here was that in addition to the central core, because there were more musketeers, the additional musketeers were commanded at the flanks. So they were referred to as commanded musketeers, and they were placed at the flanks, sometimes replacing the dragoons to support cavalry. So here you can see now the commanded musketeers. So these are extra musketeers that we could not fit into the 3 battalions. So they've been placed on the wings to support the cavalry. In this case we also have dragoons, so it's an overkill. But you could replace dragoons. So if you don't have dragoons in your army, you can use extra musketeers on the flanks to support the cavalry. And this was referred to as the German style or the German formation. So here are the 4 battalions. And you can now see the commanded musketeers on the flanks in green. There's also cavalry, and in this case we also have dragoons. In this case the dragoons are not really needed. It doesn't hurt, but they're not needed. And the general. The Danish formation was a cross between the Dutch formation and the traditional tercios. In terms of the game, in terms of the mode, it looks very similar to the tercios, but in actual history the tercios were much larger and deeper. The Danish formation battalions deployed more in the Dutch style.
Units, await my orders.
They were thinner, with fewer men as compared to the tercio, and formed a zigzag double line. It was not a very deep formation. So here are 5 pike companies, which is a good number. They are fronted by 5 musket companies. So every pike unit is fronted by a musket unit. That is historically correct, unlike in the tercio where there were musketeers all around each block of pikes. So here are now the 5 battalions. They are flanked by artillery. Artillery is on the wings. The artillery is supported by cavalry, and the cavalry is supported by dragoons. Additional units are placed as reserves behind the main infantry, so pike and sword formation, and the general is in the rear. Here is a variation of that with more pikemen and more musketeers. You end up with a slightly broader formation. Here there are 8 units of pikemen and 8 units of musketeers. The overall formation is much more like the Dutch formation, unlike the deeper checkerboard tercios. So here are the pikemen arranged in 5 battalions, and now the musketeers are at the front. So there are now 16 units, 8 units of pikemen, 8 of musketeers. Artillery and cavalry is on the wings, and the general in the rear. The Danish formation is only available to the Kingdom of Denmark, and Sweden has also its very own formation, the Swedish formation. The Swedish formation was developed by Gustav Adolf following his experience in Poland. It was a cross between the Dutch formation and the tercio. Gustav Adolf used this formation in the Battle of Lutzen. The unit was the regiment, or sometimes a brigade. Each one of those units consisted of 3 units of pikemen, and there were musketeers at the front and on the sides of each one of those units. Here we see 2 of those units. We will take a more detailed look in a minute. So it was a somewhat more complex but interesting formation. So here is one of those units. So here we have Blue Brigade pikemen on one side and Yellow Brigade pikemen on the other side. So these are the core, the center of the 2 units. So here you see them, so forming 2 brigades or perhaps 2 regiments. So here's the musketeers. So here again the pikemen, the Blue Brigade pikemen, and here are the Blue Brigade musketeers. So here's the Blue Brigade regiment on the right and the Yellow Brigade regiment on the left. Regimental artillery, light regimental artillery, was used in field battles in close proximity with the actual regiments. On the flanks we have cavalry supported by dragoons and the general in the rear. So this formation requires 6 units of pikemen and 6 units of musketeers. Other units are extra, whatever you like. There can be artillery or cavalry or dragoons or extra musketeers. So here is the Blue Brigade again. Here are the Blue Brigade musketeers. And the idea was that this was a very broad formation, so you maximize the advantage of muskets, of large numbers of muskets, so they could have a broad front. Also, the musketeers were very highly trained. They could fire faster than previous armies. They could also fire volleys for the first time. So we can see them here in action against an army of a similar size. So here's the Swedish cavalry on the left and the dragoons covering the cavalry. This was something the Swedes practiced very much. The AI cavalry is charging our left flank. Here they receive a volley in the teeth, fired by our dragoons, and their charge is broken. So the dragoons have served our side well. Here's our artillery. Next to the artillery is the Yellow Brigade Regiment. Here they are. Then the regimental artillery, the leather cannons, and the Blue Brigade. And some more leather cannons. Sometimes the artillery was placed at the front of the regiment rather than in between the regiments. This is a drawing of the Battle of Lutzen from the 30 Years' War. So here is the Swedish army, and the core of the center is the infantry. So here's the infantry. It's arranged in those regimental type units demonstrated before with a corps of pikemen. On the flanks is the cavalry. The cavalry is interspersed with commanded musketeers. Opposite them are the Imperialists under Wallenstein. They have formed 5 bastioned tercios. Additional musketeers have been placed in a trench in front of the tercios, while cavalry has deployed mainly on the wings. The Polish army was a somewhat different army than the traditional European armies. It had a lot more cavalry. They did have pikemen, but the Poles were not putting a lot of emphasis on the pike and shot formations. So here there's a small pike and shot formation in the center, similar to the Spanish tercio. There are 4 units of pikemen, each one fronted by musketeers. Artillery on the wings. More cavalry perhaps than usual. Also there's cavalry in the rear. And any additional units, in this case some swordsmen, behind the main pike and shot formation as reserves, and the general in the rear. And with the Polish deployment, we finished the review of the various pike and shot formations as implemented in the mod. Here is the typical Polish build with slightly more cavalry. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope it will be helpful in building nice armies for your campaign. Thank you for watching.